Welcome back, guys, to my studio. My name is GoldenZen. This is the second part of my podcast series to celebrate the 20th anniversary of James Bond GoldenEye, my absolute favorite James Bond movie. The last time we ended up with the scene where James Bond and 006 Alec Trevelyan entered the bottling room, and the next part would be the famous line where 006, uses the door decoder. And, the famous line, half of everything is luck, James, the other half, fate. And now, there in the original soundtrack, there was a reprise of Eric Serra's music. And before I started to rescore GoldenEye, I thoroughly analyzed the soundtrack. And with the GoldenEye Overture that I've been talking about in the first part, you can hear throughout the soundtrack, actually, there are some very special instruments that Eric Serra uses. Special not on their own, but it's a very special combination. So for example, in the GoldenEye Overture and in various cues in the movie with the music at the end with the big antenna fight, there's some instruments that Eric Serra uses all throughout his soundtrack, which is the timpani that I've also been talking in the first part about, and he also uses the triangle very often with a very special kind of rhythm. It's just, and there are other instruments that he combines in the soundtrack which are not very standard instruments that you would expect in a soundtrack. And also organ, which is kind of a special pick. The organ would play the James Bond da 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 da. And that scene, Eric Serra went for his recipe with this special kind of composition, and I went for a more orchestral approach to the scene. We're going to take a listen now. Now, the good thing, this is the first scene I actually take notice of this. The good thing about rescoring GoldenEye, I often got the question, how do you do that? I mean, you have the original soundtrack, the original music, how do you take it out and just have the sound effects, and you can mix your music, with it? That was actually, fortunately, it was quite easy to do, because the music in GoldenEye, because Eric Serra's music was very silent, it was very synthesizer and very dark. Most parts you could easily, just mix your music underneath it, especially if my own music was a little bit more aggressive and a little louder, a little clearer than the original music. The cool thing was that I really actually had the chance to just lower the overall volume, and so it was good to go. You could still hear the sounds and my music, and you wouldn't take notice of the original music that was playing. But as you could hear there, I went for a little more orchestral approach, still used some of the Eric Serra sounds, like you could hear the organ that I used there, the triangle, the timpani sounds. Yeah, the whole bottling room scene where James Bond crosses the room with that little thing in front of him and the soldiers aiming at him, I remained pretty silent with the music, because there's enough tension with the picture itself. I didn't think it needed any music there, just some occasional synthesizer deep sounds. And then Once James Bond shoots the shelf above him and all the tanks come out, and he flees out of the bottling room. There I went for a much more orchestral composition, you know, with strings, with brass. That's actually a track I rather enjoy because it has some highlights. I think it does a good job of underlining the scene. Then there are various breaks, you know, when he flies out of the plane and he catches the motorbike. He goes over a cliff with the motorbike, chasing the plane in the air, and that's where I went for some more orchestral, lightweight music. Yeah, and still there's that GoldenEye build-up, you know, there's that dum-dum-dum, dum-dum-dum, you know, in reference of the GoldenEye main theme of the blum-blum-blum-blum. And those brass staccato hits, you know, the dum-dum-dum, they get increasingly louder, building up tension, and then you can see the plane, you know, James Bond made it, and then there's the big end scene. Okay, so that was the second part. And the next part, we're going to look at some other scenes, the casino scene. I'm also going to talk about why I didn't score the car chase, and more to come in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in again, and bye-bye.